Hey everyone, Geoffrey here again. And today I have a follow-up interview with Brandon. So if you're watching this in the last, I would say, month or so before this, we would have published our first interview with Brandon. And now Brandon is joined with his wife, Jen. Um, so without me speaking too much, I guess, in the last interview, we heard a bit from Brandon's point of view on how things were like from his point of view. I guess, Jen, if I could turn it to you, what was the relationship like, and how are things like? How were you like
Um,
before, like in 2 years ago, let's say?
well, it's kind of hard to imagine it now. Like at the time, I was just kind of going through autopilot. We had a new baby, and even like at 2 years old, it was still me doing most of it. Um, so for me, I was just trying to survive, get to the next day. I had recently been diagnosed too with like rheumatoid arthritis, so like a painful physical condition. So I was trying to keep up with the baby and do that while in chronic pain and everything. So yeah, it was really just survival mode for me.
Yeah. So I think this is a classic case of when you guys met, for example, you usually meet in this setting where you guys are both single at that point in time or just single. You don't have children yet. Work and career hasn't been a big issue yet. So, you know, creating a good relationship at that point and feeling that honeymoon period seems easy. But then once you have all these challenges in your relationship, it gets hard, right? Brandon, what was your interpretation of what was happening in the beginning there? So obviously, your wife just said here, I was just on autopilot. I was on robot mode where I was just like getting things done every day. There was no feeling. I had to suppress every emotion that I had because I just had to get things done. How did you see things at that point in time?
You know, I thought I was doing enough because I was working, making money, doing the financial thing. Like I was taking care of that, and I thought as long as I was putting in my 8 hours of work and coming home, and I at the time thought I was doing enough around the house. Hindsight definitely not the case.
Mm.
But I thought I was doing my part, and I saw these things going on, it seemed like something was up with all that stuff, but I was so set on playing the victim of it can't be me that I would always be like, oh, it's just her depression, anxiety, like it's something of her character that's the problem, and she's
Mm.
just got to fix it, and then everything will be better. So I was really just deep in my head miserable because of that, and not realizing how much damage I was causing because of it.
Yeah. Jen, I mean, so from what I hear from Brandon's side, there was a time when you completely just pretty much gave up on the relationship. You said you wanted a break, and then you said eventually that becomes I want a divorce. That must have been a hard decision for you. Like a decision to divorce is not something that people take lightly, right? I'm sure you put a lot of thought into that because we stand to lose so much. We stand to lose not only like just financially, we lose emotionally, we lose the time invested that we put into this relationship. We lose also the fact that if we want a new relationship, if we want to leave one relationship, we are risking being alone, for example, that fear of being alone, that fear of having to find someone new, that fear of what will happen to the kids, etc. Um, what was going through your mind to finally pull the trigger for yourself to go, you know what? I think I've had enough. This is it.
Um, well, like our son was born in October, and I want to say just before Christmas of that year, I'd said like, no, I need help. Um, you've basically kind of like mentally checked out. I need help with the baby, and with the house. Like we're not working together, basically. And he was like, yep, okay, I'll change. That's fine. Yep. And he did for about a week or two. And then it would just slowly decline. And then around 6 months, around June, I think, of the next year, had to have the same talk again. And then around Christmas again that year. And then it was the August after that that I said, no, like, you're not going to change. It's basically just going to keep going. And that I wanted a divorce.
What was going through your mind, Brandon, when you were in this cycle of like your wife telling you she needs something? You say, fine, I'll do it. And then you relapse again. And the same cycle repeats many times. Seems like.
So for me, when I heard it, what was going through my head was, yeah, I'll do these things if you'll actually pay attention to me and, do things with me. And like, because I was so stuck in like she doesn't love me, she doesn't do what I want, like she just needs to fix herself and then everything will be fine. She just doesn't see it. That I'd maybe step up a little bit for those couple of weeks, like she said. And then I just had this negative cycle of thoughts going through my head for so long about, she doesn't love me, she doesn't do these things for me, I'm miserable, this sucks. And it just ate away at me so much that it just, even that little bit that still though, like, and even the little bit that I did step up to and do for those couple of weeks wasn't enough. But it would just decline because of the internal thoughts that I was having in my head, and drove me to the point that I just didn't want to try doing anymore. And I was just too miserable to do anything. And not understanding that, I was doing it to myself.
Yeah. So I think just to recap this point, it's funny because the reasons for people wanting to leave a relationship or why relationships break down is always very, very similar. So Jen, I don't know how much Brandon talked to you about this, but in our program, we differentiate between men who provide low-level value and high-level value, right? So if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for example, on the bottom tier rung of that, you have basically like the simple needs, like survival needs and even money sometimes, right? It's on the bottom. And I think, Brandon, you were thinking that you were giving the needs that you need to give as a man by working, making money, bringing home the bacon. Once you get home, you're like, okay, I think my job here is done. The rest, that's on you, Jen, right?
Yep.
But what you were not realizing is that you're just providing those low-level values and not providing those emotional safety values, not providing the admiration values, not providing the self-actualized values that turns a relationship from just a business transaction into more of like a romantic relationship, a real relationship. And I think, Jen, you were feeling the lack of that. And you were trying to communicate that to Brandon. But again, there's this notion of the feedback loop as well, where Brandon, you were looking at the situation, the relationship not going well, and you were not looking at how you are contributing to that problem. You're really looking at like how she's contributing to the problem, not realizing that you are in control of that feedback loop as well. And we'll talk about this quite deeply later. So first, it usually starts with one person not being able to create the high level value. The other person becomes quite jaded, quite unhappy. The unhappy partner begins to not be able to show the love that they want to show. In this case, Jen, it becomes harder for you to actually want to be there for Brandon, want to love Brandon, want to show affection, etc. And when, Jen, you stop showing affection, Brandon, you look at that and go, you know what? She's not doing the work. Why would I? But then that worsens your cycle, Jen, again, right? Which makes it even harder for you. And so you're just making it hard for everybody in this case. But throughout this whole journey, again, we'll talk about later, it takes just one person to wake up, right? One person wakes up, and that one person can really change that whole cycle in their relationship. And we'll talk about the dynamics of that later on. And Jen, from your perspective, like when you said you were done, how done were you at that point in time?
I was like 100% done. Like, um, pretty much, well, like the first time that I told him, like, you need to decide if you want to be a part of this family. And I said, like, if you need to go to your parents for a few days, just like think, figure it out. Um, and there was still part of me that was hoping, like, okay, he will do that, gain some perspective, and then come back and everything will be fine. But instead, like that was the first time that I talked to him about this, and he just kind of like sat in the basement for like 2 hours and then said, no, like I'll do the dishes or something. Like I'll help more around the house. I'll take care of the dog that I wanted and don't take care of. So it was like, okay, well, he's showing that he's invested, like he wants to keep this going. So I was like, okay, there's a little bit of hope. And then it just kind of chipped away at that every time I had to do a reset and say, like, no, look, we need to decide like if this is what you want to do.
Yeah.
And by the time that I'd asked for the divorce, like there was nothing left in me. Like there was no hope. There was no willingness to continue to give him another chance type thing.
It's understandable, right? Because we tell the men in who join the program too, it's like, think about this, okay? Like if you are not able to give the high level value, everything that your partner needs in terms of like emotional fulfillment, spiritual fulfillment, whatever it is, beyond just money. Think about this, Brandon. I'm sure when you were a kid, you dreamed about meeting the perfect woman. You dreamed about what that fantastical relationship marriage would look like for you, would feel like for you. What if you got into a relationship with someone who you thought can give you that, but then you realized after you signed the paperwork and signed your life away in a sense that this person not only cannot give me what I want, but also will not, doesn't even understand what I want. And so at that point, you have a choice, right? Do I want to spend the rest of my life with this person? And then I have to lower my standards of what I want for my relationship, for my life, for my future. Because if I want to stay with this person, that's what I have to do. Because this person, I cannot talk to this person. I cannot say anything. Doesn't get it. Nothing changes when I say something. So think about this. Your choice is either you leave the relationship and you get painted a villain forever, or you stay and you lower your standards. Every standard that you have, you lower it. That's a major lose-lose. And I think, Jen, that was what you were feeling too, where you were trying so hard to communicate with Brandon for a long time about what you needed, what you wanted, but nothing was happening. And so you had to have this impasse of like, do I stay and settle or do I leave and risk something? And in this case, the cost of you staying and settling was more painful than just saying, you know what, I think I want to explore something else. And I think if I look back as well, my partner kind of felt the same, where there was nothing that at that point in time I could have said or done to change her mind in that short term, because she's heard everything. She's heard every promise. She's seen whatever short-term changes that I want to have, that I can have. But what she's looking for was the long-term changes. And at that point, I don't think you saw any potential for long-term changes, right?
No.
Yeah. So just to give people some takeaways here. One is, when your partner decides to leave, guys, and whether this is a surprise to you or not, it shouldn't be a surprise, because they probably have thought about it long and hard already. And that's a time when, like, there is nothing you can say or do to change her mind in the short term, because you've probably done everything and said everything that you needed to say. What you need to show is, can you change for the long term? So she's not really leaving you for the problem. So don't get so myopic on like, oh, she's leaving because I don't do the dishes or whatever it is, right? Don't get so myopic. She's leaving you because she doesn't believe in the potential. That's it, in that potential. So we'll touch on that topic quite a lot later, right? But let's contrast it to how things are like now. I guess, Jen, you want to start?
Sure. Well, things are definitely better. Well, obviously. The lines of communication are open sometimes to the point where it's like you just need to stop. Because before I've even thought about the situation, he's narrating how I'm feeling and like, oh, this is probably what you're thinking, and then which is going to lead to this and this. And it's like, I didn't even get there yet mentally. Can you just like stop? But I don't think he's ever been wrong, which is probably more annoying than not. But no, as far as that communication and everything, like that's a lot better. Just feeling supported and like we're working on things together, that it's not like roommates both living together and checking off the daily like tasks. Like it's more working together towards something.
Yeah. And I like that because I always tell my clients too, it's never like people don't leave because of the problems. People leave because there's a lack of safety, so that of all the people in the world, I don't want to go through these problems with you. So you just revealed here, for example, you have obviously like being a parent is a challenge in itself. Then you're dealing with your personal kind of health issues as well. And we have a lot of men saying like, oh, my partner wants to divorce me because she's having a midlife crisis, because she's depressed, because of her anxiety, whatever it is. No, she's leaving you because she doesn't want to go through the anxiety, the depression, the challenges with you. Let's get that straight, okay? Like if you were able to create safety and create an environment where, yes, of all the people in the world, I want to spend it with you, she's not going to go away, kind of thing. And I think here, people always think reconciliation is a moment where everything is so blissful, everything like that. But you as parents, as people, you're still going to face the same problems. Pre-reconciliation or after reconciliation. But now the difference is, I think you guys have an environment to where you guys can experience it together, move forward together, find win-wins together, find that emotional safety, emotional fulfillment, emotional kind of like a place where you can rest your head in a way and lean on someone. Would that be an accurate way of describing the difference right now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, before I wouldn't want to bring any problems to him, whether it be emotional, physical, like anything, because I didn't know how he would react or like what would be the repercussions of me asking for help or trying to talk to him about something. It's like, okay, well, this is going to end badly for me. But better if I just handle it myself, whatever it may be. And then it was very isolating, like every time that would happen, because it would be like, okay, well, I don't need you. You're not giving me that support. I can do it myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the previous interview, Brendan, we talked about a bit about your victim mindset and how you never look within. You're always looking outside to blame your problems outside, etc. You never took responsibility. And I think that's where a lot of men struggle with. So that's going to be the first takeaway point I want people to have, is just how dangerous the victim mindset is and how it's difficult, but at the same time, it takes a long time, but at the same time, it's very simple to actually reconcile, to actually like make your partner feel better. Because Jen, I don't want to put too many words in your mouth here, but if I look at a lot of my clients' partners' lives, and I look at why do they want to leave in the first place, it's again, not because of the problems, but because they find that their partner plays victim so much. They're in so much denial. They never listen. And everything somehow gets pinned back on you to the point where you can't even talk about the problems, let alone resolve anything. So again, it's that potential is not there. But once you realize that, yes, he may still be flawed, inside. There's still a lot of things that annoy you about Brandon probably, but the fact that he's now not playing victim. Whenever you point something out, he can look within and go, you know what? Maybe this is me. Or he's not in so much denial about his issues, where he's justifying things and getting angry at you for bringing things up, up his flaws. The fact that he doesn't do that anymore, that just opens the floodgates of hope for you. It's like, oh, if he at least listens, understands his issues, maybe the implication is that he might be able to do something about it. Do you feel that?
Yeah, and there's less, I mean, there's still some because it's kind of like rewiring my brain at this point, but there's less hesitation. There's more, okay, I don't need to just push through this problem. Like we can work on it and find an actual solution instead of just getting through it by myself. So having that line of communication and safety net and everything there. I mean, it's still taking time to remember that that's there, but yeah, no, it's helping a lot to have that open and available.
But it's funny you say that because I look at my relationship. We've been together 8 years now. We're getting married in June, and the first 3 years of our relationship was extremely rough. But we still are facing a lot of PTSD from those moments too, where sometimes like we forget just how safe we can be, and so we hold things in like by mistake, and we make up all these stories of how our partners would react, why I can't say this, and we make up stories of what to be angry about until we have a conversation about it and we realize, what was I angry about it for? It's kind of like that. Like it's like you have this default of keeping things to yourself, letting things fester, but then you realize, wait, no, I can just poke a hole and and let it out, and it's fine. But even if, because a lot of people might be thinking right now, well, if reconciling a relationship requires that I have to deal with these problems all the time, I will never get rid of this PTSD. What people don't realize is like, if you even start a new relationship, you're going to carry that baggage from the previous relationship to this new relationship anyway. And you're going to have new problems in that relationship that creates to more baggage. So if you don't understand how to create that culture of safety, whether you reconcile, whether you start a new relationship, you're going to be facing the same path anyway. Like you're going to be facing problems of eventually the safety gets so destroyed that you can't talk about anything. And so this is why people, they find a new partner, things are good at first, they slowly degrade, find a new partner, and they never stop. And they always blame the things outside. Brandon, like, how hard was it for you to get out of that victim mindset? Because like, again, like we talked about in the previous interview, it must have taken a lot of ego, like putting down your own ego or what you think is right or what you want to happen, etc. Like, what was that mental process like for you?
At first, so it probably took 7 months into our separation or so for me to even recognize that that was something I needed to work on. And even before that, obviously it was there through this whole thing. But yeah, I was so insecure with myself and so just unwilling to admit that I was wrong, and had just had that ego for so long that it probably was 7 months into the separation when I started going, like we talked about, the red pill stuff. And then I started bringing that to her and acting like in a very toxic way with it around her, that it kind of gave me my first slap in the face that I actually felt with her when she said that, this isn't you and what you're saying is scaring me. That it was almost like a whiplash reaction of like, oh, okay, maybe something is wrong here. And I can't really explain it. It was just like something clicked. And it got me the wheel started turning on. Okay, maybe I should start looking at this. Maybe it is more me than her. And so that kind of started it, and that started down the path of finding you in the program. And then once I saw the YouTube videos and joined those pieces that I kind of were jumbling around in my head with what I was trying to just kind of come to see, because it was like almost like the beginning of a fog lifting.
Mm.
And seeing that, and then this program kind of cleared it, made it very clear what I needed to do to get out of that, and how to foster, to humble myself first, and realize that like I don't have all the answers, and I'm not always going to be right, and that's fine. But and looking at how that was impacting others and those environments, and turning that around. So yeah, 7 months into the separation is about when that started, and then it was very shortly after that that really started to ramp up, and I was able to start to work my way through that.
Yeah. So just to summarize this first point, it's really, guys, if you're finding yourself in a really dire situation in a relationship, the best thing you can do, like, your partner is not looking for you to become a perfect person, right? So we get a lot of questions from people sometimes when they say, well, my partner wants a divorce today. I don't have 6 to 12 months to like work on myself, Jeff. But we have to understand that she's not looking for you to become the perfect product. She's looking for, do you have the right trajectory, the process to actually change? If you're down here and you're trying to prove that you're already up here to your partner, she won't buy that. But if you're down here and you're at least having the humility to go, you know what, I have some flaws here, let me start to really work on it, and you can be genuine about that, even though you're here, your partner will still stay because she knows like that's a trajectory there. She chose you in the first place, right? She's not going to just leave you like that. She will only leave you when you just say you're down here, but you don't even recognize you're down there. You think you're up here. If you're in denial like that, forget it. There's no potential for anything at that point. But I want to talk about the red pill stuff again, because I've been thinking more about this. You know, the reason why they call it red pill is because it's supposed to be the men taking the hard road, right? But if you look at most red pill ideologies, it's very victim based.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm not happy, then it's her fault. If she's not happy, she's ungrateful. It's her fault. Everything is her fault. And we talked about in the previous video how playing victim is the epitome of taking the easy way out. So it's almost like the hard part about people getting out of the victim mindset is that the victim mindset always disguises itself as something powerful. So when you say to your partner, for example, it's not my fault, it's your fault, it makes you feel powerful. So the word victim doesn't correlate. But that's the very definition of playing victim. I guess, Jen, from your perspective, how did you know that Brandon was into this red pill stuff?
The first little like hint that I knew he was like going down that road. Well, I mean, he always had that mentality of like, it's the man's job to do this. And I told him from the beginning, I'm like, I'm not going to be that wife. Like, we are going to have a 50-50 relationship. Like, this is how it's going to go. And he's like, okay, yeah. But at the time, he was just saying that, thinking I would change my mind eventually. So he was just agreeing with whatever I was saying. But it was after we had separated, and he was like, oh, like, I read this book and it's completely changing my life. I see all the areas where I went wrong. And I don't even remember like the title or anything, but it was something along the lines of like him being too nice. He was the nice guy and he was doing that too much. He needed to be like stronger. And that set off the alarm bells, because all women know that if a guy says, I'm a nice guy, that you need to go the other direction because that's not a safe area. So when he said that, I was like, okay. So you think you were being too nice to me? That's okay. So that's when I kind of realized that something was not going quite right. And then it was a few months after that that we had the conversation that kind of blew everything up. And then he kind of really looked at the books and was like, oh, what am I looking into? Like, what path am I taking?
Yeah. And I do understand that rhetoric. And I'm guessing the book you're talking about is No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yep.
I do understand that rhetoric. And for a lot of men, Jen, and we talk about this in the program too, they go through and you go through this too, not just men. We go through like 3 stages of development in terms of our dependency stages, right? I think a lot of men and a lot of people, they start off in stage 1, which is that dependent to needy stage. And this is when, imagine if you have a cup, your cup is not full yet. So you're looking for others to fill your cup for you, right? You're always like, oh, a bowl of soup, give me more soup, right? And so you're always trying to be too nice to people because you think that by being nice, you can get their graces and they can give stuff to you. But then people who read No More Mr. Nice Guy, they're trying to go from 1 to 2, which is when 2 is when they understand finally, oh, no, I can fill my own cup. I can get my own money. I can get my own financial security. I can get my own emotional needs. Most of it, the necessary ones, maybe some sexual needs, necessary ones. I can get it all myself. So that's the transition when people look at books like Mr. Nice Guy and they go, wait. I've been too dependent and too nice for too long. I don't need to be nice anymore, right? And so this is where red pill ideologies start to come in, where men finally realize, I have a full cup now. Fuck them all. Like, I don't need them anymore. I can fill my own cup. And so, but what they don't realize though is like there's a 3rd stage usually. The 3rd stage is when you don't only have a full cup, but you have an overflowing cup. And so now you're desperately trying to help someone and go, I need to fill another cup, right? I got to fill another cup because it's spilling out. So most people think that in stage 2 is the highest level they can get because their cup is full. Now, if you look at like stage 2 and 3, both cups are full, but one cup is overflowing, one cup is not. And I think, Brandon, what you went through was from 2 to 3. Is if you look at real leaders in life, even like your journey as parents, at first you are the child, you're needy, you're taking. Then you become single, independent, full cup. You're selfish teenagers, right? Young adults. But then you become a parent and you realize that, ooh, I got to overflow my cup so that I can give to my children without being so self-protective of myself. Right? Business is the same thing. At first, you are needy before you make money. You make money, you get too big-headed. But then you realize, oh, wait, a good leader isn't someone who's just like taking and saying F you to everyone. It's being a servant leadership, right? Helping others. It's the leader leads. The leader is the one who's most vulnerable. And I think that was your evolution too. So I get the allure for books like No More Mr. Nice Guy and Red Pill stuff from 1 to 2. But eventually, when you're at 2 long enough, you realize that, wait, this can't be the highest level. Because if you look at the top leaders out there, they don't act like this. They don't think like this. They don't think like, I'm awesome, screw everyone else. They're actively looking for someone to help, right? I think that was what you went through, Brandon.
Yeah, I'd say it's very, very close. Yeah, to exactly that. It was, once I got there, it was, I mean, I was confident with myself and everything, but it was like, okay, yeah, but she's still miserable. And like, things might be going okay for me, but like people around me, like, it's like, yeah, there was a lot of just like I was trying to date and stuff at that point, and like nothing was sticking and all that. And it was like, what's going on? I'm doing all this stuff that's supposed to be right. And then it was just, yeah, finally that light bulb of, no, there's more that I need to be learning and doing and being than just this.
Yeah. And I love that cup analogy, because did you guys feel like when Brandon, you were into that red pill stuff, did you feel like the relationship became like a major competition almost? It's like a tug of war of like, so for my relationship, for example, I imagine it to be like my partner's cup was full, my cup was full, but it's not overflowing. So we're always very afraid of people taking away the water from our cup, kind of thing. So we're always like arguing to each other and thinking in our heads about like, no. You're saying this, you're doing this because you're trying to take away my power. You're trying to take away my freedom, whatever it is. And so when she like tells me like, hey, I need this, like, no, like I need to protect myself. You're not okay for saying that. I need to set a boundary. Like everything just becomes like a tug of war where you're negotiating almost to keep your own livelihood. Do you feel that?
Yeah, it was, everything became like an argument. Everything was just, and it was exactly that for me. For me, it was exactly that. It was, I need to maintain my power in this. Like when we were separated and stuff, and going through things with our son, and just like finances or assets, even stuff like that. It's like, I need to maintain the power. I need to keep my shield up and keep what I've got and keep what I want, so that I feel okay.
Yeah. Jen, did you feel that too?
Yeah. I felt like I was trying to do everything possible to make the transition easier for him because I was staying in the house. So I knew I had more advantages. He was displaced, all of his stuff was in boxes, and like even a lot of stuff in the house was stuff that I had brought. Because I was living on my own before and I had been graduated longer. So like I had the most money, down payment on the house, like all that stuff. So I was trying to give things to him to make his life easier as we're going through this. And it just seemed like no matter what I was giving or showing that like I don't mean any harm, like I'm not trying to take things from you. It was always like, no, I need to be prepared because you're gonna do this, this, this. And it was like, well, I didn't plan on it, but now I'm afraid that you're gonna do all these things to be preparation and I need to protect myself. And
it's funny you say that because I remember a lot of things I said to my partner too. She would do all these nice things for me. But then whenever she does nice things to me, I would say like, what? You're doing, I can do it myself? What's wrong? Like, so it's almost like, why are you pouring water in my cup? My cup is full. Like you're so insecure about the fact that your cup is full or not full that you have to prove it to the world all the time. It's like, look at how much money I have. Look at how much things I do. Look at what I do. Well, if you have like this overflowing cup, it's like the whole dynamic changes, right? Where you can say, you know what? I've grown enough so that everything that I need is already taken care of. I know. Now my focus is all about how can I help you? So in our philosophy, in our relationship now is like, how can I better myself for you? And how can you better yourself for me? Not how can I better myself for me anymore? And so it's just like both of us asking each other, how can I give? How can I give? And it just becomes a very symbiotic relationship. And it's, again, later on, we'll talk about, it starts with one person, right? It always starts with one person and eventually both do it, but it can start with one person. So guys, if you're buying into this red pill stuff, like just take a look, just take a very quick look at any men who are teaching red pill stuff. And you tell me if they actually have a very thriving relationship. Look at the poster child like Andrew Tate. Look at normal Mr. Nice Guy's lives. Do they actually have a very thriving long-term relationship, a deep connection with someone, or are they just like jumping from woman to woman to women because they can never see past that transactional value of a relationship? If you're okay with having a transactional value to your relationship, great, do that, whatever. Right? But if you want something deeper, which I think eventually people want something deeper, know that there's another level here of self-development, of self-fulfillment, of growing your self-esteem, of growing your internal selves. I think a great example of this was, there's a guy, he wrote the book, The Game. Do you know about that? Neil Strauss, something like that?
I don't know if I've read it. It sounds familiar, but yeah.
But he was the kind of guy who was like he literally taught how to pick up and seduce women. He wrote a book about that. That was his thing. And his relationship was just like a string of many women. And then he disappeared for a decade about. And then after he reappeared again, he realized, you know what? I'm married now. And I realized how vapid that lifestyle was. That like after a while, you realize, you know what? Filling my own cup is not fun. Like I want to fill many other cups. And I want to fill that cup. And I want to fill that cup properly, right? Other cups properly. So just know, guys, there's a higher level. And yeah, like this one relationship you have is going to be the most important relationship that you can imagine, right? This romantic relationship is the one relationship you'll spend the most time with. You'll have the most association in terms of like your emotional investment, financial investment, time investment. Get it right and listen to the right people. Jen, I also want to talk about this time when you started to see Brandon's changes, right? Maybe he's saying things differently, thinking about things differently, more humble, etc. What was your initial thought when you was first experiencing that?
What does he want?
The
That was
suspicion
my
was
first
there.
thing. It was just like,
The suspicion was there.
yeah,
Like
it
very
was like,
suspicious.
okay, he's being nice to me. I need to wait until for him to tell me what it is, what he wants, what it is that I'm supposed to do now.
Mm.
So, yeah, for the first little bit, I was like holding my breath, waiting to be like, okay, he's being nice. Why? Like, what's the angle? What's the end game here? Um, and then just over time, he just kept showing me like over and over again that that's not what he was doing. Or be like, okay, I'm gonna be nice for this situation, and I'm like, okay, now the situation's done. Now he's gonna want something in return, and that never came. And then another situation would come up, and he'd be like nice again, and I'm like, okay, what is this? Okay, but he's gonna ask for something after this one. Like I know it.
Yeah.
No, nothing ever came. And then yeah, it was just every situation he was just always there without expecting anything in return.
Mm. When you were when you were seeing that Brandon was being nice for that initial part, if you're like a lot of my clients partners, they usually say, you know what, I don't know what this is, but stop. We're not reconciling. I'm not changing my mind. Just stop. Right?
Yeah.
Did you say that or think that in your mind?
Um, Not really. I had a lot of other people say that to me, being like, okay, he might just be trying to like get you back, and this could just be like a short-term thing. Like, don't let him trick you. And it's like, no, like I'm gonna be on guard because I'm more aware of the situation than anybody else. So
Mhm.
kind of yes, I will change. Here's how the ways I've changed, and then slowly go back to the way
Yeah.
things were. So I was like, trust me, like I'm already on guard and on the lookout, but it was never an issue, I guess.
Brandon, what was things like from your perspective when you were starting to do things differently, according to the program that to my program? Did you feel like there was resistance? Did you feel like she wasn't? She was. How did her suspicions manifest in your point of view?
Um, I definitely saw some resistance, but I think it was the resistance came more when I tripped up, or it was like something new that I was trying to learn and implement, and like I hadn't quite mastered to the point that maybe I necessarily should have. So I did have a couple of those moments where it could get a little heated. Like I did not do this perfectly. I will be like absolutely admit that. Like it was a trial and process. Like it was a learn as I go, take the hits and learn, understand, grow, and come back better next time. But you know, I I think it was mostly I saw it when it came to talking about the emotional things, especially our in the past that I had done.
Mm.
I saw a lot of resistance to talking about that, and
They were just
opening
like
up emotionally about that.
I don't
at
want to talk
first.
about this, or it's
Yeah,
too heavy, so
like
I
it's
don't know
done. I
what's
don't
the
need to think
point.
about it anymore. Like I don't think about this. Like I don't like it. I've dealt with this. I don't need to talk about it with you. That kind of stuff
Mm.
was there quite a bit at the beginning, and it I think changed over time. Where now we can talk about those things and be more receptive to it, knowing that we're coming from good places. But I think it was that okay, I got to keep my guard up, because maybe I might be wrong, but I think it might be that, yeah, like that guard was up, where it's like, where is this stuff coming from and what's the angle? Maybe at first.
Yeah.
Jen, you were smiling when Brendan was saying his point of view there. Tell me your thinking.
At the beginning, I don't even know if he remembers me saying this, but he was trying to talk about something, and it was like heavy. I don't even remember what it was about in particular, but he was like, okay, this is part of the program and it's supposed to be like an internal thing that's happening. But, and then he goes out and say it. And I'm like, keep it internal. You're not doing what you think you're doing. That's an inside voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think, like looking back now, Jen, why do you think you were so resistant to talking about the deeper things, deeper emotions, etc.?
Mainly because anytime I had tried before, there was always a negative, not even so much reaction, but it's just consequence, I guess, to talking about those things, whether it be like an actual fight or like me being blamed, or it's just, okay, I've got the next 3 days ahead of me where he's going to sulk and I'm not going to get any, basically any communication or anything from him. It's just going to be that victim kind of like huddled and yeah. So it's like, is this worth the repercussions that are coming? So I just have to like weigh it out. So when the big stuff would come up, it's like, okay, yeah, but where was this like 3 years ago when this situation came up and I wanted to talk about it? Now I don't want to talk about it. And then it's what happens when we do talk about it, like what happens after.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to put too many words in your mouth, but again, I spend a lot of my day trying to put myself not in my client's shoes anymore. I'm trying to put myself in their partner's shoes now, right? And I think, again, you were at that position where you've heard everything, you've seen everything of what Brandon claims he wants to do or he's going to change, and now he's changing again. It's almost like you don't want to get fooled the 50th time. So you want to be absolutely sure, is this real or not? So you're going to look at him with like eagle eyes, right? So the first takeaway I want people to have here is that when your partner resists you, when she tells you, for example, like, I don't want to talk about this, I'm not changing my mind, it's over, etc., that's not when it's over. That's actually when she's looking at you the most. It's over when she's totally indifferent, like 100% indifferent. And even in most cases where they are indifferent, that is still a form of resistance. Like they're pretending to be indifferent. They're not fully indifferent. They're pretending to be indifferent just to get you off your back, kind of thing. But there's still a lot of anger there. There's still a lot of bitterness there. So that's when it starts, right? When she tells you it's over. The reason why is this. Imagine you are in a science experiment, right? And the science experiment, you want to see how people behave in their natural predisposition, like the most natural, like what would you do if no one was watching you? That will tell me who they are. So what do? You devise an experiment maybe, and you say, okay, you are a guy, you're rated. The study is about how fast you can do a task, how well you can do this task. Okay. But you know that if you tell the person, we're going to study you on how you are doing this task, that's not the best time to actually figure out what do they do with their natural predisposition, right? Because they know they're being watched. They know they're being like rated on that. So what do? You just tell them, okay, do this task, eventually task over, go ahead and go out to the room and mingle with the other guests, with the other participants. When the scientist tells the participants it's over and the participants let their guards down, they go out there. That's the moment you want to watch. So in that particular example, if you're the participant, the moment when the experimenter says it's over, that's actually when the experiment just began. And it's kind of the same thing in a relationship sometimes, right? You, Jen, you were trying to figure out, like, who is this Brandon? I want to know what does he do with the natural predisposition? You know, like at the back of your head somewhere, you know that if you somehow say, hey, Brandon, if you do this, I will come back to you. If you do that, I'll come back to you. All right. You know in the back of your head, like, if you say that, you can never trust whatever he does anymore. Because there's an ulterior motive. There's like, you're just trying to get me back. You are doing this because you are being watched. You know you're being judged on that, right? But you want to see, what does Brandon do when he's not being watched? So you just keep it quiet. You just say like, I don't know. It's over. I'm not going to change my mind. And I think what changed your mind was even after the test is over, supposedly over, and Brandon had no reason to do anything nice anymore, it's still the same, right? But if, let's say, you say it's over, and then he becomes an asshole again, the same way the participants now become an asshole, is like, oh, all these nice act that you're doing during the test, that was all an act, because that's who you are when no one's watching you. Kind of a crude example, but do you think that was what was going on in your mind of like figure out, as you're trying to figure out who Brandon was, this new Brandon?
That's definitely happening in the back. Just like, okay, these situations that he has planned, that he wants to talk about, he's got it all figured out about what he wants to say and how he wants to say it. So of course it's going to come off as nice and genuine and everything. But what about the situations that come up later that he doesn't have planned, that he isn't ready for type thing? Is he going to go back to the way he was? Or is this the new Brandon that's going to handle this situation? So it was that kind of, when he'd be like, oh, I would like to talk about this, I'd be like, yeah, I would not like to talk about that. But then if something happened, like I knew he was there and like dependable type thing.
Yeah. And I love that because I always tell my clients too, like, what you do when things are planned, when things are easy, when she's not giving you resistance, that's the easy part. This doesn't count. Okay. All the nice things you do, you can do a series of like 1,000 nice things in 3 months. Doesn't matter. If she's going to look at the one moment when you were throwing a curveballs, when you were throwing something difficult, when you could not no longer fake your tactics, that's the one she's looking at, right? Because again, like the takeaways I want people to have is when she resists you, when she tells you it's over, that's when it actually begins. If you give up right then, all you're telling her is that this is who you are when no one's watching you, when you think the test is over. This is who you are. And so if I come back to you, I'm going to come back to that. Second thing is, like, you cannot ever rely on tactics. Because if you rely on tactics and scripts and what to say, what to do, your partner can smell right through that, right? And she knows that, like, yeah, if you do something nice, but she, in her mind, she thinks there's something nice, he could have just like learned that somewhere. It doesn't count. You got to become a performer. You got to make your lowest default into someone, your lowest default is to do the right things. You got to do that. And you got to train yourself internally, externally, change the way you speak, whatever it is, to do that. Change who you are on the inside to do that. Because again, like, your partner is not trying to test you in this cunning way. It's not like, Jen, you were back then going like, okay, I'm going to say this and see how he reacts, right? It's not like that. It's more of, okay, let me look at the 100 things that Brandon has done in the last 3 months. And let's say you find 99 things that you say, okay, that was nice, but I could still see that being faked somehow. But then you look at this one moment when you say, you know what, this one though, I don't know why he would do that. Like, he had no reason to do that. I made it so hard for him. Not on purpose, but I made it hard at that point in time because I was angry, whatever it is. Ooh, that's what's going to make you start questioning and start being suspicious in a good way, to be like, maybe. And if you keep seeing that, those one instance repeated, that's what eventually changes your mind slowly, not the 99 things, right?
Yeah.
So just remember that, guys, right? It's, you can do 99 things right, but if you haven't really become a different person, she won't buy that. Nobody will buy that, right? So how do you see your futures now? Like, if you were to paint me like a vision of what you want your relationship to be in the next 5 years, let's say. Let's start with emotionally, and then just kind of like the nuanced fulfillment that you want to get from your relationship. What's next for you guys? Jen?
So that's kind of like hard to answer because it almost seems like I want to give the generic answer, right? Like,
yeah,
what do you want? Well, I want to be in love and I want everything to be easy and I want like rainbows and butterflies, but like yeah, you want all that, but you want support, comfort. You want to know that they're going to be there and they're going to anticipate not even so much needs or wants, but just what comfort you might need given a difficult situation, or that they're not going to run and hide or complain or anything like that. Like having a partner, like a true partner, work towards things and not just be content with how life is, like just getting by, whatever. Um, yeah, just kind of constantly moving forward and growing and doing that together and not separately and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically it's like not just having that if illusion of like, okay, we've reached the destination. Now it's just maintaining and just going through the same motions over and over again. It's what's next? What do we want to accomplish next as a person, spiritually, mentally, financially, career-wise, fulfillment-wise, emotionally-wise, personal development-wise. Let's be able to create that, talk about that, align on that, and work together towards getting us there, kind of thing. Brennan, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it, it's, I want to keep building this deeper and deeper level of safety with her, with our son, our family, and um being able to use that as a platform to build on those bigger things and to keep doing that, to keep going to higher levels, and for us to do that as individuals together, as a family with our son, and as us as husband and wife, just being able to not necessarily not be satisfied with where we are, but to always be able to strive to encourage each other to grow more and to do that together, and looking at how we keep doing that. And um it having that will, it just keeps leading to great things. Like even in the past, it's been 3 months we've been reconciled now, and I think even now, just looking at the short term of how much we've been able to grow together since we've really been aligned on things and working together, um, it's already night and day. So seeing how that is now and knowing that we have the systems in place, we have the process in place to keep growing, that is like anything's possible with this, and that's exciting.
Yeah. So I look back at my relationship too, because like the reason why I created this program was because I saw, like, I tried to break down like what was the steps to my own reconciliation and to where we got to where we are. I think where you guys are right now is like you guys have very strong admiration and safety towards each other. Goal alignment is still work in progress, but still better than the average probably. And I think, keep working on that goal alignment stuff, because once you start dreaming together about like a future and you start like aligning on the premises and the steps behind that goal, it really becomes unbreakable. Like you just have so much tied together, you increasing that tie between the two of you. And if you support that with that admiration, it's gonna be so great, because like the example I gave, Jen, is if you, let's say, were to have lunch one day with someone that you really admire, like deeply admire, you look up to this person, you're like, wow, I want to kind of be like that person one day, like high levels of admiration. And let's say you're having lunch with that person, and the person states an idea that you find a bit different than yours, that you disagree with even. At that point in time, if you deeply admire that person, your initial instinct is not to go, what's wrong with them? Your instinct is to go like, I admire this person, but they said this thing that I don't admire. Let me investigate deeper. Why did they say that? The intentions behind it. And so it makes, with the admiration, it makes any conversation around like goal alignment so much easier, because you're not there just blaming each other. You're actually curious about each other. You're actually like coming to each other as equals, right? You're not debating, my idea is better because of whatever. It's more of, let me figure out what your idea is. Let me try to understand it before I make any conclusions on what the right idea is. And of course, like without safety, you can't even have that conversation, right? The last thing I want to talk about too is also on just how, try to contrast for me. I'll start with Brandon here. How has Jen's behavior changed a year and a half ago to, let's say, now?
She is a lot more open with how she feels about things, and specifically like with being able to express things that she finds kind of bothersome, like especially when it comes to things that I've done. Like that was always a struggle because of how I reacted before. So now it's just, I think it was the other day, I'm just coming off the end of a cold, and like I was sick as a dog, like had no energy. I think it was on Thursday, I was laying on the couch and she was out and our son was home, and she said to me, it's really triggering for you to be out here, because before, when you were sick and out here and I'd ask you to do something, you get really angry or you'd turn it around on me and stuff. And her just being able to even say that in the first place, instead of just swallowing it and keeping it in, like she would probably have had to before, was just like that was like really impactful. And like we were able to kind of talk about that, how it was triggering her, why, the feelings behind it, and turn it around into a positive there, because she was able to tell me. And that kind of stuff never happened before. And if it did, I always felt worse about it, because I would beat myself up, play the victim, right? So
yeah,
like, I know why it never happened, but it's stuff like that that's happening all the time now, and we're just able to find those win-wins together because of it. It's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed.
Brendan, you mentioned in the beginning of the interview, some of the narratives that you're telling yourself was like, well, she's not showing me all this love and affection and all these things. Do you still harbor those thoughts?
Not at all. The first thing that comes into my head now when she brings something to me is, okay, tell me more about that. Like, let's talk about it. Like, I want to be here to help and to understand. So yeah, absolutely. Let's go through it. Like, tell me everything.
Yeah. Before I
Yeah.
go to you, Jen, like one of the biggest things that happened in my relationship in my life was when I shifted my mind away from what can you give me to what can I give you, which is what I think Brandon you were talking about. So for example, like for men, a big topic is always sex, right? A lot of men, especially when they're trying to reconcile, or they're trying to like fix their marriage, they always ask the question like, well, I'm a guy, so I need to have sex. If I don't, then bodily it's not good for me, whatever it is. And I used to, if my partner was like sick for 2 weeks, and then it's like compounded sometimes with like a period. So like she was sick, she was out of action for like 3 weeks, and I wasn't having sex for 3 weeks. I would always complain. It's like, whoa, how come I'm not getting this? And I would always get really upset at my partner for not giving me sex during that time. But then I thought about it, and it's like, us having to rely on our partners for even sex sometimes. We look for a partner for sex sometimes. It's not the healthiest way to go, because there's going to be moments when she's pregnant, after she gives birth, maybe even after menopause, I don't know, where she may not be able to like give, like you might not be able to have the sexual fulfillment that you need, kind of thing. And are you going to be okay with that? Is your relationship going to stand strong despite that? And the problem is like, I went on this meditation retreat for a year, and the meditation retreat, I didn't have sex for a whole year. Didn't even masturbate, right? Nothing. And I never felt like suppressed. I never felt that I was lacking something. I was like devoid of something, because there's so many other sources to get that feminine energy, to source that from within, to get that fulfillment beyond just sexual pleasures, right? And I think what you're experiencing, Brandon, is you're understanding how to source a lot of the internal fulfillment on your own without needing the need for other people. And you're understanding the principles of what, for example, if you look at even like something as sensitive as orgasm, right? People think, oh, that's not something replaceable. No, that's just you get orgasmic experiences through many other things than just ejaculation, a lot of other ways. And so it's just like finding the healthier alternatives for all these things to source the fulfillment from yourself. So you don't need it from your partner. You can still want it, but you don't need it anymore. It's a big difference, right? And I think once you stop needing something and you come from a place of want, I want sex, I don't need it, I won't die without it, then you can focus your mind on, once you stop needing, you can focus your mind more on giving. And once you shift your mind to giving, all these little things, the petty stuff don't bother you anymore. It's kind of a nice place to be at. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, do you want anything for that, or do you want me to
No, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I mean, that, like, I'm trying to think of like every conversation that we have, like, it brings this internal satisfaction with it that I never really experienced before. So like, and it like I can like feel the bonds and the connectiveness between us like growing because of it. And that was something that like you were talking about, like I always thought before, it was like, if we're not having sex, she doesn't love me, or she doesn't want me, or like we don't have a connection, we don't have that without it. And yeah, that was me. And I can feel that level of connectedness with a lot of the emotional conversations and the way we're opening up to together just through that. And it's like you said, like yeah, I want sex. I want to have that level of physical intimacy and stuff with us together, but it's not the only way that I can get that now. And I can source it from me and the way that we have our conversations, the way that we're opening up to each other and creating that safety with each other is just as satisfying.
Yeah. I think just to close off on this topic, like a lot of relationships, a lot of men, they, especially new relationships, you watch like TV shows around people who are like dating around and everything like that. They always talk about the sex as if like the sex is like the most important part of a relationship, is the most highest level of pleasure, highest level of satisfaction you can get. It's like the quality of your orgasm and the number of orgasms you have. But I think what we're saying here is like, when you understand what it means to create like this deep emotional bond through by creating safety first, create a deep admiration, and you understand how to appreciate the more emotional parts of the relationship, sometimes it gives you a higher level of satisfaction than sex can. Like, there are times when like we say to each other, me and my partner, like the conversation we just had or the time we just shared, the deep connection we just shared, it actually makes us weep at how satisfying that feels. Sex never does that to us. We never weep, right? It's so moving, it's so touching that's I think an asset and experience that's rare, because anyone, you can pay for sex. You can pay for good sex. You can pay for a good orgasm, but you cannot pay that. You cannot ever, no matter how much money you have, that you cannot pay that. You cannot buy that. You know, that's such a rare thing. Jen, let's turn over to you. How have you seen Brandon's behavior change?
Just being that like overall supportive person, not feeling on edge all the time, and just kind of that feeling of calm that's just in the house now. It's not just chaos and upset feelings. It's just there's a safety and a calmness that I find that comes along with it. And it doesn't feel like there's this like heavy feeling in the air that's something unsaid. There's never that feeling. It's always just calm, and I don't even know how to express that, but just that everything that you want to say can be said and can be expressed, and there's no fear along with it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, as you're saying that, Jen, I could see a lot of men looking at this and going like, because, you know, Brandon, like if you look at the red pill rhetoric, right? There's a lot of men who believe that like, in order for you to keep the sexual spark alive, you gotta create tension. You know that? You create the tension. And so when I say, for example, like you gotta create a safety, a lot of men balk at that because like, no, I want tension. I want that to keep like that thing alive. But what people don't understand is like, the relationship's job is not to create the tension. Life's job is to create the tension, right? Life will create the tension for you. You don't need to create more tension to manufacture it. The relationship should be the source of healing for that tension, right? So as you go about to your work, whatever it is, you're creating tension. You come home, that's not a place for you to create more tension, right? That's an important thing. So you guys just understand that, right? You don't, yes, tension is needed at some point, but that tension is created. It's not the tension that is creating the spark. It's the relief from the tension that creates the most spark. It's almost like what I always say, like women don't like bad boys. Women like reformed bad boys. Okay, even more, right? They like that relief, that juxtaposition it feels amazing. And the other thing I wanted people to take away from this too is this whole notion of it takes two to tango. And Jen, I don't want to take anything away from your role and how you guys have come together here. But here, like, what people need to understand is that whether you know it or not, each of you, whether you're the woman or the man in a relationship, whether you feel like you're the victim or not, what you do already determines what your partner is doing. So this whole notion of like it takes two to tango or you cannot change your partner is complete BS to me. Because let's say, okay, Brandon, you come home, you're in a foul, pissy mood. Your tension makes Jen feels tense, right? Right there, what you do already affects what she does. Now imagine, Jen, you respond to Brandon's tension with more tension. Like, why are you so tense? I don't like it. That tension creates more tension in Brandon. And Brandon being more tense makes you more tense. And before you know it, you guys blow up, right? So each of you are already affecting each other, albeit in a negative way. So for you to say like, I can't change my relationship, it's hopeless, that's just BS. Because when you start to change your behavior, you also symbiotically change theirs too. In this case, like, Brandon, you taking ownership, stop playing victim all the time, right? Being more humble, looking at yourself and seeing your flaws head on and go, let me fix that. That starts to change Jen's behavior, right? It makes it easy for Jen eventually to go, you know what? Maybe I can express. Maybe I don't have to express it in such an angry way. Maybe I can just talk about it with him. Jen's changes in behavior, changes your behavior even more, and it keeps going, right? And every single moment, even if we're trying to not make a decision, even if we're trying to escape the situation, by escaping, by ignoring it, we are either perpetuating a positive loop or a negative loop. We have to understand that. And it's not like you're changing the person's behavior directly. You are changing the environment, and the environment changes the person, right? So as you create safety, for example, it just makes it easier for you guys to show up. So takes two to tango, BS. If a partner says it's hopeless and I can't change your mind, BS, you can. Just change your environment and you'll be surprised. And I can't change my partner, BS, right? Stop trying to blame everything on people's character, because like what you need to understand too is we only work with people who are married usually for a long time. There was a reason why you guys picked each other, right? There was a reason. You saw something there. You saw some potential. So the attraction is already there. And you saw good qualities in each other. And then once it progressed, you start to see the bad qualities, and the bad qualities and your inability to resolve the bad qualities are the ones that drive you apart. So nothing is to say, like, if you changed bad qualities, you remove that, you replace it with good ones, why can't reattraction happen again? It doesn't make sense, right? So I guess my point is, even if things seem dire and hopeless right now, don't give up, right? Take the leadership, because once you take the leadership, you'll be very surprised at what happens here. Before we end, I also want to talk about how this has changed the relationship with your children, because, as the reason why I started this, Jen, is because my parents were never loving. And as a kid, like, being in a broken home like that, it made me suffer as a kid in more ways than I thought, right? Not only did it create a bad environment at home, but it's also taught me all the wrong things that led me at first to perpetuate all the bad things as well. So if families breaking apart, it's not just like one family breaking apart. You're actually creating kind of like this generational chain of you breaking apart causes your kid to learn the wrong things that makes them break apart, and they're going to teach it to their kids, etc. It's such a multi-generational thing. How has this changed the way you interact with your kids, and how your kids are kind of feeling in their relationship now, or in their family now?
Well, I can still like picture our son's face the first time that we like hugged in front of him, like just like a few months ago. And just the look of like shock and happiness. It was like, oh wait, like this is what you're supposed to do? Like, and he was just so happy. And having those moments where we're playing and laughing together, and it's not like a separated time, like it's really together as a family. Like that has brought out so much joy in all of us that it's completely unreal. But yeah.
Brendan, what's your perspective on this one?
Yeah, like that moment that Jen mentioned was one that stuck with me as well. Like I didn't actually notice his expression there, but she told me afterwards, like because we were talking about that at one point, you know, how now that Oliver gets to see us, kind of like what he's going to think. Because my whole, at the beginning, like we had talked about before, my whole purpose of even joining the program really wasn't because I was trying to save my marriage. It was because I didn't want my son to grow up acting the way I was acting and what he was seeing. So with everything I've learned and how we're able to support each other and be together now as a family is just like, I think we're seeing more out of our son, like his expressiveness, his creativity, like all the positive qualities that we're seeing out of him, I think have just shot through the roof because we're able to do all this together now. And he has that level of support and understanding that uh I wasn't able to give him as a father before, but also we weren't able to align with and give together as his mom and dad, as a team. And now he has that, and it is just like there's not really any words to describe how different and how amazing it is. Really, it is beyond anything.
You know, one of the questions that I always ask myself is, because I get this a lot, obviously, is what is my opinion about divorce and how it affects the kids? And the question that people always ask is it better to stay married for the kids or divorce for the kids? Which is better? Well, my opinion on that is like, if you are getting divorced, there means that there's usually some very toxic traits that you have that is most likely going to also destroy your relationship with your kids. So whether you decide to stay married or not, it doesn't really matter. Because either way, you're going to destroy the relationship anyway. You're not being the best for your kids, most likely. Like, because no one has relationship problems. Like all the stuff that drives your partner crazy is probably going to drive your kids crazy. It's the same thing. So I think the question is not like whether you should divorce or not for the kid, like which is better for the kids. It's whether you should, again, humble down and really see what the flaws are and try to work on the relationship. Because by trying to work on the relationship, you are forcing yourself to look within. And usually what you'll find is like what you will fix as you're trying to fix the relationship with your son, with your daughter, with your wife, whatever it is, you're fixing a lot of internal things that will eventually fix everything. So if you need to divorce, even if you divorce and you say to yourself, like, I'm divorcing, and it's going to be good for the kids because I want to be in a happy relationship. I don't think if you carry the same self to that new relationship, you're going to create a happy relationship anyway. You're going to show a good example to your kids. So the goal is always like grow first and then decide later, I guess. That's it. I think that's all I wanted to discuss. We went pretty deep in a lot of different directions. So thank you guys for being so open. Brandon, like we ended the last time, what would be if someone was in the same headspace where they're playing victim, they're maybe buying into like the red pill stuff, they're maybe blaming this on their partner saying like it's hopeless, I want a divorce. They feel hopeless as well. What would you say?
I would say humble down and take responsibility for what's in your control to change. that is the beginning of something that can change everything if you can do that.
Yeah. Jen, if you were to talk to a version of yourself a year and a half ago and give yourself some feedback and advice to the version of yourself, what would you say to that version of yourself?
Just not to give up, because everything like seemed so bleak all of the time. And it was just, yeah, so just don't give up. It's not foolish to hold out hope. Um, yeah, I think that things can get better.
Yeah. All right, guys. So I want to end it there. So guys, if you want to explore the program that Brendan explored, we have a masterclass that kind of shows you a very high level view of it. It's not going to teach you everything, of course. It's going to teach you like the high level outline of how what you will learn, how it'll work, etc. So we have a masterclass. It's about an hour and a half long. At the end of that, we'll give you a chance to apply for the program if you're interested. Make sure you pay attention to the application process very intensely, because we currently only have room to accept less than 10% of people who apply. We're trying to expand our team, but expansion is a slow thing. Demand is growing faster. So make sure you are paying attention to that application process, because we are very selective of the people we enroll. That's it, guys. Like, thank you so much for your time here. Jen, pleasure meeting you.
Nice
I hear so much about you, but I've never actually met you. So it was good. All right, guys. I won't take too much more of your time. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.